First of all, we got to give thanks to Open Fortune for making this possible. Open Fortune provides brands the most creative ad canvas out there. You know it, the fucking fortune cookie. We are in 47,000 restaurants across the whole entire United States, reaching 99% of zip codes and giving brands a golden ticket to reach their consumer at scale. So thank you for Open Fortune just for coming out here and making this possible and getting us on this yacht in Brand Week. Journeying from the dynamic world of Eli Lilly to the hallowed halls of Purdue University, Ethan Braden's marketing trajectory is a masterclass in diverse leadership, championing the innovative Purdue Global to bridge education for working adults. Ethan's vision has been transformative. Recognized as the American Marketing Association's Marketing of the Year in 2020, he's been the catalyst behind Purdue's brand evolution. Go Boilermakers. Today, as Purdue's EVP and CMO, Ethan is at the vanguard of academic marketing.
Well, Jim Collins talks about who luck, the people in your life that change it. And for me, it was a guy, and it's his birthday, actually. He's 65 a day. His name is Dan Hassler. He was the CMO at Lilly. He brought me there in 06, and in 18, he called me and said, hey, come up and join me and Mitch Daniels at Purdue, and let's build a marketing engine that is commensurate to the power and the preciousness of the Purdue brand. And so my wife being a Boilermaker and having a young child, they made the move to West Lafayette, and we've built a hell of a marketing engine up there at this point.
I love brands that people get tattooed on them, and I know the Boilermakers in Purdue are one of them. But before we get into it, I want to break us back down to what was your dream job as a kid?
At one point in time, I was professional, athlete, Mark McGuire, Walt Weiss, I want to be a baseball player. And then I went to my first country music concert.
Were you a Cardinals fan?
No, I was an A's fan from Albuquerque, which is odd. But,
okay.
And then I went to, first country music concerts, and I saw, no, that's what I want to do. So country music singer would have been
okay. And when did the country it's okay, we can talk about failures on this podcast.
Yeah, let's do that.
When did the country music dream die?
The first time I sang karaoke. I sang Kenny Chesney, She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy, to a
great song.
Pretty quiet DC bar, and I think that's probably when it died.
We're not going to make you do that again, but on next episode we'll probably make that happen.
Thank you.
So you talk about like a lot of our guests we've had in the past, and today especially, we've done just like universities, and that being the first major decision that you make. Either you have it as an older adult, but a lot of people have it as younger, like being the first decision process that you have as a young adult, like first autonomy and agency to do so. What made you want to go to or like around the colleges in Oregon?
Oh, when I went to Willamette, my undergrad. So I was looking at small liberal arts schools where I could play football. And I was looking mostly back east, Williams, Amherst.
What's Willamette like?
Willamette's a small 18.
I have to say, this is the first time I've heard of.
Yeah, Willamette, damn it, right? 1,800 students, 100 football players, 1841 Methodist school.
So you got 5% of the spot being.
Yeah, I mean, you get there 2 weeks earlier, and next thing you know, every 18 people, you got a friend in class or on campus, et cetera. So incredible liberal arts school. I studied economics, and I was telling the guys before we shot this, we went up in April. It was green. It wasn't raining, which was rare. So everyone was happy, and it was Camelot. And I got on the plane with my mother that night, and she's like, that's where you want to go to school, isn't it? I said, yeah, that's where I'm going to go to school.
Is it D2, D3? Or
D3. And then it rained every day from Thanksgiving to spring break, which they don't warn you for. So it was, I had a great experience. But
you play all 4 years?
Played all 4 years.
Nice.
Had a great experience, but nobody in Indiana has ever heard of Willamette. So yeah, there is some brand equity there.
100%. I mean, what's one lesson that you took out of just college athletics at a D3 level that you take into your job today?
Oh, I think it's just the balance and the commitment, right? We weren't on scholarship. We didn't have training tables, right? We played in the afternoons. We were all studied. We were all paying, some form of tuition. So it was about the love of the game. And you had to structure your days just as you do in high school athletics to, study, go to practice, come home, eat, get some sleep, and you can't get in too much trouble. So that balance, that commitment was certainly something I learned.
Absolutely. It's funny. Like I worked with somebody, and she ran a whole company based on recruiting college athletes because of their work ethic. Like the fact that you got to wake up at 5, 6 in the morning.
Yes.
And after a Friday night out or whatever it is and pay the price, like that's accountability right there. So you graduate, What does that first job look like for you? Because I feel like a lot of our audience is younger, and getting that first job it's a little weird. Like, you don't have much on your resume other than some internships. How do you land at Eli Lilly?
Well, I did that after grad school. So I went to Notre Dame for my MBA and was fortunate enough. And the interesting thing about that for me was I applied for 5 months to try to get my foot in the door at Lilly. And it was actually 2 fraternity brothers that finally kind of kicked it open for me and got me out of the dark into the light. And then it was Dan Hassler, this gentleman I spoke of, who hired me for my first internship, believing in what I had done largely through the fraternity that he thought was applicable in terms of having the motor and the initiative to be good as a marketer. So ultimately, it was through a wonderful network that I had.
And talk to me about getting that MBA too, because I feel like a lot of our audience as well, again, 21 to 26, thinking about getting their MBA, like what made you take that step to do it?
Yeah, so I have a little...
And is it worth it?
Oh, it was wonderful. I guess you could call it a non-traditional path, right? I had a liberal arts education in economics and Spanish. But then I went for 3 years and I worked for my college fraternity. So, Lilly's not necessarily going to hire me out of Beta Theta Pi, having traveled the country with fraternity men, starting chapters, advising chapters, et cetera. So I needed a bridge. I needed something that could get me into industry, and I needed those skill sets. I needed that leadership. I needed that acumen. So going to Notre Dame for 2 years, gaining that MBA, gaining an internship that got me, that tryout was critical for someone that was breaking into industry versus coming straight out of college already having it.
And what did you take from like that fraternity landscape to like your job at Eli?
The network, but also the values, the leadership, the communication skills, the influence without authority, the collaboration, being able to get things done through people. All of that was transferable.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about your time at Eli because it's a big company. You start out like, I've only worked for companies with less than 50 people, and you're walking into the doors of Eli Lilly. Like, what's your first impression?
I had a dear friend in town who said if you were lucky enough and smart enough, maybe you could work at Lilly. And that was the reputation I had. So it was
And where was that in the country?
In Indianapolis,
Okay.
Since 1876. It was an incredible training ground. Smart, decent people. I remember a Notre Dame grad actually said one of the best things about Eli Lilly and Company, just like Notre Dame, was he said the asshole factor is really low. And I love that because it was really smart people with very low ego trying to do God's work, right? They were trying to change, improve, and save lives through medicines. So phenomenal company, and was lucky to be there during the period that I was.
So within Eli Lilly, you wore many hats, ranging from U.S. brand leader and in endocrinology to U.S. marketing director for diabetes. Like, how did you navigate in between these roles and changing just the priorities, but at the same time having the same bottom line and same mission?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot, right? And I had a wonderful boss who's actually double Purdue educated. And I remember him at one point in time. So I had worked in the pain state for a while, which was a specialty state for Lilly. It wasn't kind of their heritage or history. But I remember him saying, we don't have a big pipeline in that space. Are you a pain expert or are you a good marketer? Because if you're a pain expert, I can't move you anywhere. I got to keep you there. And that's all you're good for. But if you're a great marketer, I can put you anywhere. And that's
how do you define the difference in like techniques and like those contributions?
Yeah, do you understand a pain state, or do you understand the fundamentals and the disciplines of creating, reinforcing, and changing attitudes, beliefs, behaviors as a marketer? If you can do that, you can do toilet paper, you can do Hershey's, you can do diabetes, you can do a university, because it's transferable, right? Phil Kotler says it takes a day to learn marketing and a lifetime to perfect it. But I can market anything if I understand those fundamentals. Versus if I only understand one drug or one pain state, you can't move me anywhere.
So what was the moment then for you when you say it takes a day to learn marketing and that like you can market anything, that like you realize I'm good at this and I have a knack for it and I fucking love it?
Yeah. I think the first drug, Cymbalta, was a winner, right? It was a $5 billion drug at the end of the day.
And what did Cymbalta do?
So it was an antidepressant, but it was also duly indicated in things like back pain and knee pain. Depression hurts, Cymbalta can help, right? You saw it for years on television. But I think for anybody that's listening or watching, right, when you get into a job where you start to lose yourself in it, where it's 10 o'clock at night and you're in the flow and you're loving what you're contributing. In Chariots of Fire, Eric Liddell says, God gave me a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure. When I market, I feel God's pleasure, right? I get in that flow state. I love the work. I can pour into it and lose myself. And it was on that drug and thereafter that I think when you work with enough clay to mold something beautiful, you realize what you're good at.
And then when you're working with these drugs, like what kind of like, how are you getting to know the drug as well as like going to know the people who are taking it.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect point, right? That's the good marketers. They're going to deeply invest, one, in the science, for instance, in that, or their product.
Because you got to understand it.
You got to understand
really, really well.
Deeply, because you're talking to docs, right?
Yeah.
You're talking to payers about the value proposition of that drug and the health outcomes of that drug. You better know it, and it's learnable. But I wasn't a biology major. I wasn't a chemistry major. Right? So deeply invest that. Yeah. And then there's the human side that we're talking about on the couch, right? Of how do you deeply get to know that patient, their frustrations, their tensions, their motivations, their family. They don't want to be on a pill. They want to play with their grandchild. They don't want to be on a pill. They want to get off the couch and get back to work, right? So how do you get that empathy? How do you get that understanding of what role, medicine plays in their life? And can you appeal to them and the doctor to make sure that you can play a role in making it better, that you can sometimes save it or improve it or at least change it?
Absolutely. So over your 10 years, like if you were to sum up Eli Lilly with one lesson, what would you take away from it?
I'll tell you. So I'll tell you a quick story. And I think it's applicable in marketing anywhere. So I did my first ad campaign on Cymbalta, and I had the pill breaking through the journal ad. I was so proud of it. It was beautiful. Pill looked strong. We're introducing a new indication. I just loved it. So proud of this. My first journal ad.
What journal?
I think it was in Pain, or it wasn't New England, but it was a big journal ad. And we had it on prescription pads, and it was when you could do all that kind of thing. Sure. So proud of it. And we had an exec walk by, and he saw it on my desk, and he said, "No good." And I was heartbroken. I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, "You've made the pill the hero. The pill's never the hero. The patient's the hero. And you can market all you want when you keep the patient in the center. But as soon as we make the pill the hero, we become self-serving." He's perfectly right. We're the mentor, right? We're Yoda. We're not Luke Skywalker. And that's true of Purdue or any product, right? People don't want the product. They want what it does for them, right? The identity.
They're the hero.
They're the hero. Yeah. So as soon as I keep the patient at the center, not the pill, that was the biggest marketing epiphany I had at Lilly and thereafter.
That's such an aha moment. Yeah. Like, I love that. And then obviously you end up transitioning to Purdue. Like, how did you know it was the time to move on from pharmaceuticals and into the college space? Because I spoke to a lot of marketers today, and they've taken turns in their career, but this one is it's a hard left turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I took a flyer in between, but really it was when a trusted mentor comes and says, "I've got an opportunity," right? We've got a bunch of clay at a place to mold something beautiful. It'd be the first time I get to work for him directly. I had a young son who had been very sick, so to go from 120 days or 150 days a year of traveling to maybe 20, the quality of life, the focus on family, the focus on a place I could believe in, with a lot of upside, it just fit and checked a lot of the boxes I needed in my life at that point in time. So,
and what about Purdue versus any other university really stood out to you?
The same guy said, I love the story. He said, he used to go to campus in the morning, Purdue specifically, believing something was science fiction. And then he'd interact with the people there, and he'd see what they were working on, and he'd see how they go about their jobs. And he'd go home at night and he'd believe at Purdue, it wasn't science fiction, it was documentary. And I believe that when you see 27 astronauts, when you see people solving, we have the whitest paint in the world now, which is going to solve, hopefully, some of, at least, global warming, cooling.
Miami goes underwater, but
that'll help. Smart concrete, removing space debris, solving forms of cancer, right? When you start to see that at Purdue,
all coming out of a small town,
coming out of a place where we're as proud of our astronauts as we are our quarterbacks, and that balance that you find there, it's a special place.
And can you talk about this mentor? Because I feel like he's played a role in your life.
Yeah, really lucky. Dan Hassler went to Purdue University, graduated in 80, did his whole career other than MBA at Duke. His birthday today, he's 65 today. He says he's 21 for the 44th time. But he's a hoot, and he's a tremendous guy. I heard on a podcast the other day, David Spade said that John Lovitz, you can get to know him in a day and it takes you a lifetime to believe it. And that's Dan. You can get to know him in a day, but it'll take you a lifetime to believe him. But CMO at Lilly, worked for Mitch Daniels as the Secretary of Commerce for 2 years, and then he ran the Research Foundation at Purdue for 5 before he hired me. Tremendous marketer, tremendous dad, salt of the earth human being. And I remember him saying, when he brought me to Purdue, my wife asked, like, is this legit? Like, is he really that invested in you? And I asked him, I said, Dan, this sounds almost too good to be true. And he said, Ethan, what you need to understand is I stopped working for myself 15 years ago. I work for others now. And that sort of advancing that servant leadership.
He's about one-liners, man.
He's amazing.
Keep on giving these one-liners.
He's amazing.
They're great. With like, I want to dive in deeper. Like, what about, you spoke about all the things that Purdue has done in the past.
Yeah.
What made you want to come in and do things differently and like bring a new marketing arm to them?
Yeah, from our chairman of the board to our president to Dan on down, what the pitch was you've got this 150-year-old iconic Purdue University, Drew Brees, Neil Armstrong University.
Who dat?
Strong, precious, iconic brand that stands for grit, innovation, collaboration, Midwest humility, etc. But underneath it, they didn't feel like the marketing engine was terribly strong. And so it wasn't doing justice.
And if you were to give us a look into college marketing as a whole, what does that look like, right? Like we all go to college, or not we all, but a lot of us go to college and like, we don't really know what's even hitting us. So like what's on the inside?
Well, it's got I think it's lacked a sophistication. It's lacked a discipline that maybe industry has, had for 10 or 20 years in front of it. You have these old comm shops. They produce magazines. It's a lot of newspaper writers. It's a lot of reporting. It's a lot of random acts of marketing. It's a lot of being driven by the requests of the campus versus being the driver of the brand. So when you get folks like myself and others that come from industry that have a different perspective on brand and marketing as being, the driver of an exemplary customer experience, you try to flip that on its head. So what I found was sort of a antiquated, emaciated comm shop. And what I wanted was, like Dave Gerhardt says, don't create a marketing department, create a media company for your niche. I love that idea.
Yeah,
how do we turn that on fire and share these incredible stories with the world and enchant them so that they feel something and they do something on our behalf? They buy our tickets, they come to work for us, they come to school, right? They move to West Lafayette. Once we got that sort of mentality, we got those sort of people, we got that sort of culture, you can set the place on fire.
Yeah.
And so that was the quest.
Absolutely. And you talk about just like Purdue as a whole, like what are you doing now with like Purdue Global to change the game and like innovate the marketing over there?
Yeah, I could talk to you about all day long, but the adult online marketplace is nuts, right? So there's 40 million Americans who have some college credit but no degree. They're going to die earlier. They're going to make less over time. They suffer maladies, health maladies.
Right.
They volunteer less. They donate less. They have a different quality of life than those still that are achieving college degrees. So there's 40 million Americans, including 750,000 in the state of Indiana, that went to college, got some credit, probably got some debt, and didn't get a degree, right?
Most likely got some debt.
Exactly. So, for the last few years, my feeling on this brand, on this Purdue Global for us has been, we wanted to enter into that market and serve them, a land-grant university. Those folks are never going to come and be 4-year residential students on our campus.
And go to the football
Exactly.
games, yeah.
They're 35 in Tupelo with a job, with kids, dealing with an aging parent. They got a mortgage, but they're trying to get that degree. So we want to go from being an undifferentiated product in a very bloody red ocean landscape of adult online education to being a truly differentiated brand that deserves the Purdue name.
So my question to you then, right, is how do you differentiate yourself from the online landscape, right? It's so hard. You got so many universities coming in with with a lot of value at a low price point, and a lot of brand names. And Purdue's got an amazing one too, right? But like, what's the, how do you separate your marketing there and your value prop?
We deeply studied those students, and what we realized were a couple of insights with them. So there, you study those 40 million, there is a good population, a good segment of students that want three things. They want a brand name they can trust. And for 150 years, Purdue University, right? I had guys that said, the military is never going to bet on a university that's fly by night, right? And no one was ever fired for hiring IBM, right? That's the trite line. They want a university when they go to Christmas and they're telling their father-in-law that I'm just gone back to school and I'm getting it through Purdue Global versus this school over here. They don't scoff. They don't make fun of them. They say, good for you. That's going to help you. So that's number one. They want a degree that they can be proud of, that employers are going to respect, and that they can trust. Number two was they say, hey, I'm a 46-year-old server. I've been working for 25 years. Life got in the way. I got some college credit, but then I had some kids. I got a job, etc. But when I come back to school, I don't want to feel like I wasted the last 25 years of my life. I've gained some life experience. I know how to do some things. Can you meet me where I am and treat me like a true working adult that, deserves respect, that deserves understanding? Do you get me? And do I feel that with my professors, the way you treat me in admissions, and how my education looks? So they say, hey, treat me like a true working adult. And then the third is they say, hey man, I've got hopes. I know things when I sit across the table from my colleagues that have degrees. And what it really was a redemptive quality where they say, I want to prove to you what I know. I want to prove to you the value I can add to my corporation. And in some ways, I need that paper to do it. Yeah. So give me that redemptive opportunity. And that's why our campaign is called The Comeback. We're saying, hey, don't just go back to school, come back to Purdue Global, and move forward. And so those three insights have driven us, I think, into a space where a lot of universities can't come because they don't have 150 years of trust.
Yeah.
They don't have 150 years of history.
I mean, Purdue's a brand and a half.
Exactly.
And I know it. I don't believe in this, but I want to play devil's advocate just for fun. What would you say to people who say an online degree is not as valuable as an in-person degree?
You're 20 years late. It's where the world is at this point in time. I mean, we also offer Purdue University purebred master's degrees on your couch, in Albuquerque in mechanical engineering. And we've got some of the top 10 in the world, right? That instruction, like we learned that during COVID. We learned that through Coursera. We learned that through Google. I don't need to sit across from you. I can sit on Teams.
Yeah.
And I can scale that, and I can do it at 1 a.m. and I can do it in my closet, and I can do it on the hood of my car. It's absolutely the disruption we need in education.
I fully agree. I just wanted to play devil's advocate there, but like, how do you play with the alumni network as well, and making sure that your global students are feeling I love being a Syracuse alum. Yeah. It's awesome in New York City, especially. I feel it. I like being an alumni better than actually like being a student.
I understand that.
How do you make that feeling for your global students?
Yeah, I think with Purdue Global, in particular, we gave it the name, right? So as soon as you gave it the name, like the son has married into the family. Yeah. Put your arm around them. They might not be blood.
Sure.
They've married in, but they're now family.
Like
and
that.
So we gave them the name, number one. But number two, we're a land-grant university. Like we were founded during the Civil War to bring education to the masses in a way that, others weren't going to be able to access it. This is the land-grant mission of the 21st century. We're going to bring an education to those that can't come to West Lafayette for 4 years and live in the dorms, right? So when we explain that to our faculty, when we explain that to our alums, they get it. They go, hey, we understand maybe it's not the experience I had at Purdue University. It's the Hilton Garden Inn, maybe not the Hilton, but it's still Hilton and not Joe's Motel. We've got a common essence there, of persistence, of innovation, of commitment, of collaboration. And we oftentimes will talk about, it might be similar to the enlisted and the officers, but we're all in the military together, right? We just got there a little different way. And sometimes they cross over. So for us, we're really trying to embrace this notion of, in these years, we've innovated to take education to 40 million more people that were never going to come to our campus for 4 years at 18 to 22.
I love the way that you think about brand because it's super impactful for Purdue. How do you make sure that the Purdue brand is being continued and just being cherished along the ride?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, I saw a great quote the other day that said the only way to really convey your brand powerfully externally is to deeply understand it internally. And so we work with our staff and our team to really have a culture around empowerment, around optimism, around excellence, around care that, I'll use this word, wants to, with our marketing, enchant target audiences. And I used that word the first time with my staff and they all scoffed and they said, are you a Disney princess? I said, no, you got to understand the definition of enchant, right? So give you a quick story. First time, I'm going to tell you, the first time we ran our own commercial aimed at the Purdue IU basketball game. Instead of running the institutional ad with beakers and happy students walking our campus and laughing and backpacks, we ran an ad that night that we knew our alums would love, and we knew the IU fans probably were not going to like a whole lot. We took a couple jabs at them. And we ran it. We won that night, thankfully. And we watched Twitter blow up, and we watched the text messages just flow in and the goosebumps of getting board members saying, that's the best collegiate ad I've ever seen. And we said, well, what's that feeling? Like, what does that mean? And I said, it's enchant. And they said, well, what does that mean? And to enchant is to rouse and attract an ecstatic admiration and demand for. I want to rouse you, and I want you to have an ecstatic admiration and demand for what I offer. If we do that, the world's going to catch on fire.
What was the story of this ad? You got me like,
We've got a couple, and it's one's a young lady goes on stage and she talks about why she loves being a Boilermaker, and she talks about Mitch Daniels and says, I have a president that could have been president, and your little 500 might be little, but our pre is grand, right? And we don't like red, we like black and gold, and we spit crickets, and we have all 4 seasons of weather in one day. But it was all about if people like us do things like this, Seth Godin tribes, right?
Yep.
And it was a little bit of a stick of, these are Boilermakers. We're the #1 public institution in the state of Indiana, and our fans loved it, and they didn't. And that's okay, because great brands attract and they repel.
Yes.
But the goosebumps we were able to give that night, the emotion that was there was intoxicating, and that was enchantment. And so to your point, we want to tell incredible stories that enchant our audiences, that then they feel something and they do something. Like I said, they come to school, they recommend us, they buy our tickets, they come to work for us, whatever it may be. Marketing creates, reinforces, and changes attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. That's what we want to instill.
Absolutely. So I got to brag for you a little bit. You were crowned Market of the Year by AMA. Like what came into that, how do you win that award? Let's talk about it and brag about yourself. Like what do you think of that one campaign or something that really like got their attention?
Yeah, you asked me some of the right questions on this. I think one, Purdue, when I caught it, had a ton of clay to mold something beautiful. Two, it was ripe for a brand transformation to go from the random acts of marketing that we found on that campus to getting 400 or 500 marketers on that campus singing off the same song sheet, right? I think it's Minister Hal Lucock says nobody can whistle a symphony, it takes an orchestra to do so, right? We needed to get an orchestra of marketing there to start telling our story in harmony. And we got an incredible product. So once I get to tell that story of 27 astronauts, of 150 years of giant leaps, of the cradle of quarterbacks, of one of the most innovative schools the last 6 years in a row, like I've got all kinds of clay. All we had to do was inspire and excite and unite and cultivate a marketing community that wanted to tell that story to the world at scale and with excellence, and people took note. So I built a great team, and they did all the work.
All right, I got one more question before we hit the quick question round. If you were to give your 21-year-old self some advice, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, I get a lot of folks that come and ask me like about MBAs or what job should I start with or what should I major with or major in. I love this notion like life's not linear. Like my life has taken crazy turns. It's been dependent on people. I've experienced a lot of luck. And so I think the piece for me would be, relax a little, be a constant learner. That one for me is big. So Daniel Pink talks about engagement at work.
Love Daniel Pink.
And he says it's a function of purpose, autonomy, and mastery.
Yeah.
So purpose at Purdue, right? It's easy to get behind wanting to trumpet Purdue University. Autonomy is, can we give our people the space and not micromanage them to let them really live their craft and do the job well? But that mastery piece is like, do you have it inside to become the best, right? Like, will you listen to the podcasts? Will you learn? Will you read? Will you network? Will you attend conferences like this? Will you become a master of your craft? At 21, I'd say relax a little bit, dive into the work, right? Everybody from Rich Roll to Adam Grant, et cetera, will say it's not about intensity, it's about consistency. So put in the work and remember life's not linear. Like let those turns come and go over time and follow your heart in that regard.
There we go. We're going to keep that as a time capsule for your family, and we're going to package it up because that was perfect. That was gold.
That was awesome.
All right. Well, all right. We're going to hit the quick question rounds brought to you by Open Fortune. They're creating the world's most creative ad canvas through, the Fortune cookie you know and love, reaching 99% of zip codes through 47,000 restaurants. So without further ado, Ethan, let's open up these Fortune cookies, crack them open, and see if they had something to do with our conversation. Okay. You go first.
All right. This is good. So mine is new flavors can ignite unexplored thoughts. Staples, meet your new print shop. And yes, we can print bigger than this. That's good to hear.
There you go. Mine says rewards are right at your fingertips. And that's a drink after this podcast.
There you go. Yeah.
Mine also is Staples. We got 2 Staples. Hey, Atlanta, when's the last time your fortune paid off? Cash in, QR code, scan. Anyway, big thanks to Open Fortune for making this possible. Really appreciate you bringing us out here. Sweet. Let's get into the quick question round. So with this, I want you just to rapid fire as well.
Okay.
1, 2. When I ask you the question, cool? Okay. 10 questions. Okay. Last about 2 minutes. Person you'd most want to sit down to dinner with, dead or alive?
David Ogilvy.
Favorite city in the world?
Albuquerque, New Mexico.
I still want to go to the Hot Air Balloon Festival.
Yes, you do.
Is it okay to sleep with socks on?
No. Absolutely not.
You guys are just wrong. Favorite romantic comedy?
It Could Happen to You.
I haven't seen that one. Favorite alma mater graduate?
Willamette would be Mark Hatfield. Notre Dame.
Ooh. Can't say Brady Quinn because he cried in the NFL draft.
I like Brady. Our current president, Father Jenkins.
There you go. Favorite Purdue grad?
There's so many. My wife. Betsy Braden, my wife, 2007.
In 40 years, what will people be nostalgic for?
40 years, what will people be nostalgic for? Fortune cookies.
There you go. What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Sleep with socks on.
This guy's your guy. You slept with 20 before this? In one sentence, how do you sum up the internet?
World of opportunity.
Love it. If you could put one message on any fortune for 10 million fortunes across the country, what would it say?
Be kind.
Love it. And in 10 years, in 2033, where can we catch Ethan Braden?
10 years, I'll be 53. Hopefully on a golf course in Scottsdale.
Ethan, thanks for coming on, man. That was awesome.
Thank you.